Join our network of podcasts and talk shows on treasurecoastradio.com. Go to www.treasurecoastradio.com for more information.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Mindset with yours truly, Sherelle. I am so happy to have you guys here. I tell you all the time, you could be anywhere in the world, and you're choosing to be here with me and my special guest on Mindset with treasurecoastradio.com. I'm so excited to have our show tonight. You guys, we are in for a show. I've got to tell you, before I even do my introduction, this is a topic, this is a person, and this is just a topic that we're about to get into that is so appealing to me, and a lot of people that I've met in my travels and my journey, and even practicing, with psychology and therapy and group therapy and couples counseling. This is a topic that always pops up. It's a topic that I have tried to get training on. I have tried to trust my own gut on, and I'm just so excited to have an expert here and to just be able to help us decode some things. So you guys, give a warm shout out, welcome to our guest. I want to say doctor. I don't know why, but John Michael Redenbaugh. So shout out to John Michael, y'all. Shout out John Michael. I don't know why I want to put doctor in front. Do people tell you that? Have you ever heard that before? Doctor. Okay, so it's not far-fetched.
There is a Dr. Redenbaugh.
Okay, yes. There's a Dr. Redenbaugh somewhere. Okay, but yeah, you're I don't know. Maybe it's just because of how you present yourself, and I don't know, your knowledge is, I just want to call you doctor. So I might just say doctor. But welcome to Mindset. Thank you so much for joining us. And how are you feeling today? How's everything going?
Such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
I've heard so much about you. And
thank you.
And just great to be in, here at this time and
yes.
be able to have a conversation.
Yes.
I'm glad it worked out.
Yes, absolutely. I thank you for gracing us with your presence. I'm so excited for the light and the conversation that you're going to be able to bring. And guys, I've never met Doctor. No, I've never met John before, but even just with us sitting around chatting, he has such a pleasant energy about himself, and it feels like I've met you before. Like, it just feels, it's so strange. I don't know if you felt that with me, but totally. It was so comfortable. I just, what they say, everything works the way it should work, So, you know how I like to make people cry, as Joel likes to say. No, but just kind of give us a background with what is your title? What do you identify yourself as? What do you, like, if you were to meet someone for the first time, how would you introduce yourself? Because I know you're a man of many trades and many things. So how do you identify yourself as who you are?
That's an interesting question. And by the way, I like to make people cry as a channel.
Right?
So
don't they all?
Don't they all? Right? It's funny because when you get into people's dreams, they share a dream and they never know where it's going to go. Right. And a lot of times you're like, well, your dad this and
right.
that. And next thing you know, you got a rock star that's known all over the world bawling in front of you.
Yep.
Like, sorry, dude.
I didn't know I was going to go there.
Bunch of friends, but
right.
Yeah.
That's how dreams go for sure.
That's how
for
they
sure.
Go.
So, are you like? What would your title? What is your title? What would you call it? Because I know you're a life coach as well. I know you served in the Navy. I mean, what did you like to be?
I've been privileged to do a lot in my life so far. What I do is I always tell people I'm a trainer and a consultant. And a lot of people will be like, oh, okay. And then they've put me in the box in their mind.
Right.
That's their mindset. And I would rather talk about them. And so I don't like put up barriers necessarily to people getting to know me, but I want to make sure they really want the answer.
Sure.
And so people that want to know more, they're like, well, what do you consult in? And then I say I work in intelligence. And then sometimes people go, and then they go, well, I'm a mortgage broker, or then they go on to them. And I'm like, okay, well, that's as far deep as they can wade.
Right.
But a lot of people say, what do you mean you work in intelligence? And then I'll say, well, what I do, I call spiritual intelligence. And then again, some people will go, and then that's it.
Right.
Like, okay.
They'll be like that Bart Simpson meme where they're just like backing up into the grass.
They're like, who is this guy?
Right.
And then they'll say, no, what is spiritual intelligence? And I say, well, we advise people all the way from heads of state to CEOs of $100 million a year revenue companies to Hollywood stars, producers, any type of person, but particularly high-level people, leaders, with intelligence that comes from dreams. And intelligence for us is not like just a pat on the head. Hey, you had a dream because God wants you to know he's with you. That's not intelligence.
Right.
We're talking about you need to move. You need to move across the country. You need to go to this place. And 36 hours later, you find yourself on the road. That kind of intelligence.
And that's really to trust that, because I mean, we've all, if you have a spiritual aspect of you, you know, not even the religion piece, because, you know, if you have a connection with God and you've been around churches and stuff, we've all met the pastor that's, you're on the brink of greatness and you're about to do this and that sounds great. Everybody is, and it's almost like if you want to pass a test study, well, duh, but sometimes people need to know what to do to take it a step further. So I love that you differentiated between that, because that's important even for a person like me to trust the advice, or in order for me to take heed for something, I have to know that you're not just giving me a generalized, you know, eat right and be healthy type thing. You know what I mean? So how do you know, and how do you help with people that have that mindset to where, you know, the world's out to get them, they can't trust, and, you know, they're hard egg to crack? How does that, because again, with your authenticity, with your energy, I know you get through to those people without even, you probably don't even have to try to, because they sense it. But have you encountered people that they just do not believe, or they're having a hard time, even though they deep down do believe but don't want to?
Yeah.
And what's that like for you?
Well, the best way to do it is to confront it head on. And what they really want to know, and I read a lot of books, and I love to study psychology. I'm definitely not a clinical psychologist or anything, but I like to look at body language. I like to look at, you know,
the
energy and how
nonverbals
people, all that stuff. And it helps with what I do, but learning to be able to understand where people are coming from and make them feel comfortable. Nobody really cares for the most part what you do. They want to know, can you interpret my dream? Like, I can tell them stories all day about, oh, we met with this guy and that.
How's this going to affect me?
Right. And they're waiting for you to close your mouth so they can say, well, I have a dream.
Right.
And then tell me your dream.
Right.
And so that's always the best way. I give you one of the most dramatic examples we have. I have a core value that a lot of people in the dream world, they just hit up against pretty hard. They don't believe it, and it actually triggers people. And I was so excited to speak with you because of your background, because a lot of it can fly in the face of what's taught from the scientific side. And so this core value is something that I argued against for 4 years.
Wow.
And it's this statement: all dreams come from God.
Okay.
And so people are immediately like, oh, I had this nightmare, and oh, my kid gets it. Well, what about God would never? And then they start making statements about God like he's their drinking buddy. God would never give my kid a reason to be scared at 3 o'clock in the morning.
They clearly didn't read Revelations.
Right. And they didn't look at the dreams of kids in the Bible.
Yep.
You know, and so when I first heard that, I was working with an executive that worked for Zuckerberg, worked at Facebook, and she had this dream, and it was about a relationship. And she had this dream, and then I met her 10 months later, and the person that she was about to get engaged to had ghosted her, walked out of her life, blah, blah, blah. And the dream was a riddle. Like, this guy cuts his finger, and he's bleeding profusely from his ring finger. She takes him to the hospital, long story short, and she goes, honey, how did you cut your finger? And he says, because it's cold in Serbia, they cut the keys in half. And she wakes up. So she's like, what the heck?
Yeah, what kind of parable is this? Yeah.
You know, and so she's like, first of all, what does it mean? And it took 3 times a meeting with her and her sister and having coffee with her to unpack that.
Right.
And then she's like, why did I get it then? And I'm like, it's a do not open until Christmas letter. She's like, what do you mean? God wanted you to know before the heartbreak happened that he knew it I love the phrase, has it occurred to you that nothing occurs to God? He knew it was going to happen. He knew she wasn't going to understand it. He could have spelled it out for you then, and you would have just, you know, prayed against it, or you wouldn't. And now, after a lot of the pain and the heartache is gone, you're just like, man, I just wish I understood that situation. Now you're getting the decode, and you're being able to understand. And so as I'm interpreting this dream, she says, you know what, I hate dreams. I wish I would never dream again. And I felt like God felt like he got just punched in the stomach. Like, ugh, I felt like the Holy Spirit was grieved, if that's a thing.
Like, I'm trying to help you take heed and send you those signs, the warning. And I encounter a lot of people like that. It's almost like, you know, you'd rather not know, but then it's like, I hope for the best, but expect the worst. So, but it's like your energy. Like, so it's interesting how people, I would want to know that the tornado's coming. Give me a heads up, give me a chance to act before just getting hit with it. So that's got to be, and I can only imagine the predicament that puts you in with, here you are, because even with me, with, you know, practicing, we hit some triggers, we hit some things that, can either help someone have their breakthrough or send them back into regression and, change and transform their whole life for the negative. So with you've got to have a level of understanding and just reassurance to be able to help people get over that, not knowing that reaction. Because I'm sure you don't know how someone's going to react when you help decode a dream.
And you don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
When they tell you a dream, I had no idea what we were unpacking. And as she says this, I hate dreams. I wish I would never dream again. I heard just kind of like in my spirit, like, I heard, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come along. For behold, the winter is past. The rain is over and gone. The flowers have appeared. The time of singing has come. And I'm thinking in my head, what the
She's
hell
not
does
going to hear
Song of
this.
Solomon
Yeah,
2:2,
right? She's not going to hear this.
have to do with the fact that this chick never wants to dream again?
But from what I'm wondering, does that mean that, yes, you're going through pain and hardship, but the sun is going to come? You're going to be okay?
It does. But my next question was, what does this mean? And I heard right after this.
Oh, because at that point, the divorce, not divorce, but the engagement hadn't been.
Right. The guy's gone.
Oh, he's already gone.
He's already
Gotcha.
gone.
Okay.
He was gone 9 months prior.
Okay.
And so what I heard was, who do you say arise to? Arise, my darling. And I'm like, somebody that's sleeping. Yes,
Get up.
Dreams are the love language of God to his kids.
Right.
That's what I hear. And I wish I would have been like, oh, wow, that's profound. I didn't. I immediately argued, well, I've always heard that there's demonic dreams, soul dreams, and God dreams. So I don't know where this is coming from.
Right.
And I just, you should probably look that up. And so I started researching every dream in the Bible. I'm going to find every demonic dream there is.
Right.
2 years later, after an exhaustive search and reading over and over and over every dream and every verse on dreams, there are no demonic dreams in Scripture. Now, there's dreams of genocide.
Right.
There's pronouncements of judgment. There's dreams 3 days later, the guy's beheaded.
Right.
Like, there's some gruesome stuff.
Yes.
Every one of them is from God, without fail. Every one.
And so nothing was demonic.
Nothing was. So I'm like, well, what about soul dreams? I go to work. I'm having a troubled day at work. I come home thinking about work. I go to bed. I have a dream about work.
It, yeah.
Right? And maybe it's just and then God leads me to this verse in Ecclesiastes that says, when the mind is troubled, dreams come. I'm like, aha. So you're having soul dreams because your mind is troubled.
You're uneasy.
And he laughed at me. He's like, when do you need for me to speak to you more than when your mind is troubled?
Right.
I'm like, oh, man, I thought I had him on this one.
Wow, look at that. Look at that. That is profound, though. That's interesting. And would you say that when a person is clouded, or would you agree, when a person is clouded, and when things are just going on, it's a million things, and sometimes people just can't. Some people thrive in chaos, and some people face fight or flight. Do you, and what you've seen, do you think that dreams tend to come as that way to help someone have that aha moment of them to maybe get guidance, or is it a warning? Like when someone is, even if God was to come to you at a burning bush like Moses, some people can get so clouded that they're not even going to hear God at that burning bush, but they'll have a dream. So what in your experience, do you think that the dreams can always show some type of calmness or a perspective, or like what if you could define it, what's the point of them? Like, what is it always that profound, or do people just eat pork rinds and then sleepwalk and dream and then that's it? Like,
the pizza dream. We had cheese last night. Or,
exactly.
And Christmas Carol.
Exactly.
A tasty bit of cheese that I had.
Because that's
No, dude, you're having an encounter with an angel. Like, what's going on?
Right.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I love that question. And what I believe is they're all from God, every single one. And to take it even a step further, there's not one dream in the Bible that means to just pray. So like when Jesus' parents, Joseph and Mary, right? God appears to a dream to Joseph in the middle of the night, and he says, leave now, right now, and go straight to Egypt, because Herod wants to kill your son. So they didn't, let's pray about this, and let's find out. And they're like packing their go bag and like, bro, we're out.
No need
and
to
so
tell me twice.
that's actionable intelligence. That's not like, I think maybe God wants me to be calm about my work situation. That's not actionable.
Right.
I come from a background of finance and nuclear physics. So if we can't quantify it, if you can't make numbers make sense, don't give me fluff.
Right. You have to logically. And that's interesting that you say that, because a lot of times when people have that background, and if it can't be defined by numbers, science, or in writing, a lot of people struggle with that, the little gray area there. How did you determine and get to a place of knowing and trusting, or maybe this is just was something that you had to learn and trust within yourself? How did you get to a place of knowing when I have to move and when I can kind of play around with something?
That's really good. That's a really good question. It came through heartache. It came through, I was having dreams about a particular situation for a number of years, 2, 3, 4 years.
Now, was this like every night, every week, or just like
not
once
every
every
night,
6
every
months?
week,
or,
but, often.
Okay.
And then there would be these things where I would go someplace and there this person would be, and I'd be like, I just had a dream about them last night when I go to the coffee shop and they're
there.
This is weird. Like,
confirmation.
What is this?
Yeah.
Is this God? Is this, am I freaking out? Am I in the twilight zone? Like, what is happening?
Right.
And so I thought it meant I'm supposed to work with this person or do ministry with this person. And then ultimately I came around to the idea that, is this like my person? Is this like, is this supposed to be a romantic thing?
Right.
Because, color me interested here, but I don't know. And it was weird because they were sort of a famous person. And so it's not somebody that you would run into.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I had like 9 different in-person encounters with this person.
Wow.
And I'm just like, how in the heck do I
what's the link here?
What is going on here? Hello, cosmic energy, divine creative. Somebody tell me what's going on.
Send me a
sign. I'm writing all these dreams down, I'm dutifully, taking notes on everything. And then, so I had to get to a place where I'm like, okay, well, I know she wants to be married. I know I want to be married. I've reached out and I've done probably everything I can respectfully do without qualifying for a restraining order.
Right? Yeah, you knew.
Reach out, make a phone call, talk to people that know her, send her a letter, flowers, whatever, do something. And I've done those things. And I'm like, to go any further could be intrusive. And I dude, I'm out. If you feel uncomfortable, I'm gone so fast. No, that's not me. But I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. And so I just prayed that God would expedite her husband. And if it was me, great. And if it wasn't me, then I'd know. And I was drifting off to sleep. I was up in Alaska, staying at a friend's house, and I'm on the couch. And I just felt, check her Facebook. And I'm like, I have checked her Facebook way too much.
Yeah.
I need to not be checking her Facebook.
Thank God they don't see when you view it.
Right? Yeah. I'm just like, nah, I rebuke that. I don't need to check Facebook. And so I drifted off to sleep, and then I woke up and I felt it again, check Facebook, and I looked at, and I was asleep like a half an hour. And everybody that we knew in our community was congratulating her on the fact that she just got engaged.
Look at that.
And I'm like, if I would have checked Facebook when I first felt led to, I probably would have seen the announcement come out instead of opening Facebook and everybody's like, hey, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. And so at this point, dreams are stupid.
I was going to ask
done.
you,
forget it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how did you, what correlation did you see between, okay, she's not my wife, she's not supposed to be my wife, why is this being deposited in my spirit?
Exactly.
Why was this tormenting me?
I was so bitter. I was done.
What do you think that was about, though? What was that?
That's a really good question, because I've still gone back and been like, what the heck was that about?
Yeah.
So I packed up all my dreams. I had notebooks full of long, 4 or 5 page dreams about.
Do you think it was a warning to her?
I don't know what it was, but I put them in boxes, threw them in the back of the closet. Thankfully, I never destroyed them. Now, at the time, I lived in Ohio. What's interesting is this person at the time lived in the city that I now live in.
Wow.
And so when somebody said, you need to move to this city, they actually said, you need to go here. You need to go where the battle is. And the city is a famous city in Civil War history. There was a major battle that occurred. And I'm like, okay, are we talking about that battle, or are we talking about the battle from my heart?
Right.
Where I really battled God with dreams, like, God, I don't need your dream, God. Because I was at the same place that my friend at the beginning, when we talked Facebook, was, I never want to dream again.
Right.
This is all fluff.
Because I'm getting my heart broken.
Yeah. I'm like, God, look, if she ain't in, I'm cool.
Right.
But don't make me think she is.
Right.
And
I'm misled.
Like, come on, man, that ain't cool. And so I was ticked.
Of course.
I was like, I'm not writing anything. This dream stuff is garbage. And then slowly over a year or two later, it's like I have a sign on my head. People would be like, "Do you know anything about dreams?" I'd be like,
They do that.
What are you talking to me for?
You could be in like at Publix in an aisle, and somebody will just come up to you talking about that. Yeah,
exactly.
It's like,
and I'm
trying
like,
to get some
why are you?
Cheerios.
Like, I'm a finance guy, dude. Like, why are you talking to me? Oh, just let me tell you. Okay, fine. Tell me your dream. And I'm thinking, I don't want to hear this lady's dream. Like, can we move on? And so they'd say the dream, and I'd be like, I don't know, maybe it means this. Oh my gosh, how did you know? My husband just had surgery.
Wow.
And I'm just like so done. Like, can we change the subject? Like, whatever. I'm glad you got something out of it. I really don't want to talk about your
And it's coming
dream.
so natural for you, like just effortlessly.
Right. And in fact, to the point that I learned not to joke around when people are telling me about their dreams. This has happened more than once, and I've gotten in trouble. So a lady's telling me, yeah, I see this car accident, and there's this train, and it hits a car, and blah, 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 and I don't know. But I always took this path with my mom, and I'm like, well, it's not like your mom died in a train crash or anything.
Like, actually, she did.
It's like, how did you know that? How did you, did you just feel that spiritually? And I'm like, I was being sarcastic.
Right, I didn't mean it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's happened more than once.
Oh my goodness. So take me back. Growing up, because at some point you definitely have a gift, you definitely have a calling. And I don't know if you're anything like I was. I tried to run from my calling. I didn't want to hear about it. Nope, I'm not, this isn't what I'm doing. When did you, and obviously hindsight's always 20/20, you see things differently as we mature and we grow older and we gain wisdom. What was childhood like for you as a little boy?
Childhood was good. I had a mom and dad, they're still together.
Oh, wow.
They've been together like 56 years.
What's their secret?
I know, right? So it was really interesting. My mom was a nun.
Oh, wow.
People are always like, is your dad a priest? And I'm like, why you got to go scandalous? Right? My mom joins the convent at 13, dedicates her life to God. Like, I just want to serve you. I'll never leave unless you make me. She starts getting migraine headaches. And I would say this if my mom was here, she's a little mouthy. She's where I get my mouth
spicy.
from. Yeah, she's spicy. And so her and the Mother Superior are kind of bopping heads. And so she came to her and said, look, if you have a neurological disorder or something, we can't take care of you here. So we're going to ask you to leave
Just
the
because
convent.
she was defiant. Because she's defiant.
So she's like 23 years old, been there for 10 years, like, what the heck do I do with my life now?
I know.
God says go back to college. She goes to college, meets my dad.
Look at that.
They get married. And so I was raised in a Christian school, and so I had a big faith background, which was really cool. But, I didn't dream a lot as a kid. One of the memories I do have is I was scared of the dark often. And I didn't like to go to bed. And, typical.
What age were you about
probably
then?
5.
Okay.
And so my parents found the shortest scripture verse in all of the Bible. It's like a 2-verse long psalm, and said, memorize this, because the Bible says the word is our sword. And so this is how you battle if you're fearful. And so I memorized this, praise the Lord, all you nations, laud him, all you peoples, for his loving kindness is everlasting and his truth endures, praise the Lord.
And forever, yep.
And so whenever I would be scared to go to bed, I would say that, and then I would drift off to sleep. But I was bullied by a kid next door. And so I ended up becoming very angry as a teenager. And I remember being very frustrated, being very angry. At one point I was a cutter. At other points
you isolated, internalized. Was your anger, like, did you ever experience the physical aggression, or you isolated your anger?
It was self-directed.
So it wasn't like you were out there trying to...
sometimes I would act out.
Okay.
And so I was always the problem. I was that kid at the Christian school.
Well, you didn't know how to articulate, this is what's going on, so therefore I'm going to behave because I don't know how to,
At one point, they moved my desk into the principal's office.
Did he go to the school too, or he was just a neighbor? The kid that was bullying you?
No, he was just a neighbor.
Oh my gosh. So at this point, you're preteens age, 12, 13-ish?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what it is about 13-year-olds. That is the hardest age. I mean, when I encounter anyone, they have a memory that stands out at 13. It's just the hormonal stuff and just everything else. So that age is, I don't know, it's profound.
It is.
So did you not feel comfortable or safe with telling your parents what was going on, or what was your fear with that?
I remember one time my mom went over, grabbed this kid off his own porch.
Yes, Mom.
Took the belt, freaking whipped his butt.
Yep.
Well, if you take care of your own kid, it was that kind of a thing. But no, I think my grandpa died too. My grandpa was my best friend.
So
we would go down to the basement and pick out any book I wanted. He'd take me upstairs, sit in the rocking chair, sit on his lap. and he'd read to me for like 3 or 4 hours. At least that's the memory. And so I loved Grandpa, and he died when I was 8 years old, and I never cried. I never mourned. I was just like...
Why do you think you never grieved?
I don't know. I don't know if it just didn't hit me, or if I was trying to be tough. You know, I was kind of a little hellion. I think when I was 7, I went to the emergency room 7 times in one summer.
Oh, wow.
Like broken bones, diving off the porch.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, got hit by a car.
Definitely
like,
fearless, it sounds.
Yeah.
You weren't afraid of anything. When Grandpa passed, do you remember him visiting you in dreams?
No. Never.
Really?
I don't think I've ever had a dream about my grandpa.
Really?
But
that's interesting because a lot of people when they lose someone close to them, a lot of times they always say they don't speak. They're just there. And the phenomenon, and even when I started, researching and studying a little bit about dreams, just to become aware and knowledgeable of it, it was just so overwhelming. I'm like, how do you specialize in this? But spiritually, a lot of people say that they're not supposed to talk to you. That, so it's like, how do you know? It's, but sometimes it can provide the peace and comfort, and then sometimes it can trigger you and send you back into the 5 stages of grief. So it's interesting that you didn't dream anything. And do you think there's a possibility that you did and you just don't remember, or for sure?
I think it's definitely a possibility. I wrote down one dream when I was a kid, and I think it was when I was 13. And it wasn't about my grandpa. But I do believe there is a verse in Scripture that says the dead have no communication with the living.
And that's why they don't speak.
Right. And so we've done videos on this because, like you said, it's a phenomenon. So many people, to the point that some people wonder, is he missing? Did Dad just leave, or did he really die? Like, I didn't see the body. Like, and people have come to me and they've had dreams about, I feel like he was killed by somebody, and maybe they... And so I've had people on a show that I host sometimes called Dream Talks, and a lady's brother went missing, and he appears to her in a dream and says, "Sis, I'm dead.
Wow.
My car's in a ravine. I'm in the trunk. They shot me in the face, blah, blah, blah." And so she goes to the police. And, of course, they open an investigation, and then they come back and say, "Yeah, well, we think it was suicide. What about the blood in the trunk?" They're like, "How did you know that?" Like, she literally solved her brother's murder.
I'm thinking of, remember Sylvia Brown? Even though there's a lot of controversy, she was the Montel Williams, the talk show host, like the sitting psychic, but she would helped, and there was controversy with her. I mean, however you look at it, psychics or not, no one's ever 100%, but she did assist in a lot of murders. That was like her specialty. So to hear you say that, I know that the FBI doesn't rely on that, but they definitely go to people who have those visions and have that to help solve and provide input. That I know for a fact. So for you to say that, that's very, very interesting. I just wonder, how do you get to a place of trusting that this is truly what I know without a shadow of doubt, that I know, versus I just went to bed and I'm thinking and my brain is replaying, because sometimes dreams can make no sense. Like, it's like, why did I even think that? You know what I mean? So it's hard getting to that place of knowing, of trusting yourself. So when you're going from did the bullying stop after your mom beat him up?
No, I think it was into probably 16, 17.
He kept going. Who was this kid? He must have had some my goodness.
He had some issues.
Why,
but it wasn't
why
just
do you
that.
think...
Because I acted out, I ostracized a lot of people from me. And so, like, I have a memory, it's a small K through 12, 100 kids. And I just lashed out one day, and the principal was at a meeting. He was gone all morning, and he comes back, and there's so many notes on his desk for problems with John Redenbow that he literally comes into the main area where everybody is, and he goes, "Anybody who had a problem with John Redenbow, out in the hall." Like,
oh my goodness.
I'm not kidding. It's like a freaking movie.
Oh my God.
And literally half of the school, there's like 50 kids.
What?
And so he brings the first one in, and he called me a name, and he did this, and he pulled my hair. and he comes in exasperated, and he's like, "Look, dude, like, I don't have time for you. I'm going to spank you once, and you're going to apologize to everybody, and we're going to be done."
This man's stressed.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Now, looking back, what do you think that 13, 14, 15-year-old John needed? What do you think would have helped you at that time from adults, parents, teachers? Just what do you think would have aided the situation as you look back on it?
That's a good question. I think a lot of the anger, because of I was very strong-willed. My mom was strong-willed. My dad was, and I'll tell my dad, Dad, I love you. You're the classic geek. Dual doctorate in biology and physics, programs computers for a living, like slide rule in the pocket kind of a dude. And so Mom kind of ruled the roost.
But Mom probably had to have someone like that because it would have been a balance. Imagine Mom being with someone like they would have,
Yeah. So I think there was just a lot of internal stuff that I was dealing with about trying to find out who I was, feeling rejected a lot because of the way that I treated people. And it's interesting because the same principal that did that, because I was in that school for like 8 years, he gave me a little card that had the verse on it, Proverbs 18:24, a man that has friends must show himself friendly. And so for like 8 years of my life, this was like my mantra, like my little scripture verse, like, hey, you know, you want to have friends, show yourself friendly.
You have to act accordingly, yeah.
And so it's interesting because now I look back as an adult and I can understand what it's like to see a kid going through these problems, being triggered, or people feeling deep-rooted rejection from way back in the day and feeling everything from suicidal to wanting to hurt yourself to like understanding all these feelings, but now realizing from a place of hope that, you know, that scary dream that you had might be God actually putting his finger on a part of your heart that needs to be healed. And if we know anything about God that we've learned in dreams, it's God is into shock value big time. Like you said,
and
the burning bush.
And if it looks crazy and chaos, it's
if
he's
it's
working.
A fireworks show, it's
he's
just
there.
like parting the Red Sea, like look closer.
Yep, absolutely, you're right. I agree with that entirely. And that's tough to think of when you're in the moment, because even with the cutting for you, I'm sure you weren't trying to kill yourself. You were just trying to feel some type of something. You know, it's like, I want to feel something. And again, what 13, 14-year-old kid, boy at that, is going to use the words to be able to properly articulate, this is what's going on, this is what I'm, you know what I mean? So it's hard to look back on, but as you're seeing that is, I'm sure you've been able to look at, you know, situations that are occurring within society as a whole. Like, you know what, I understand it from a different lens now, from a different framework. I see things differently because of my experiences. And I'm sure that in turn, too, has aided in helping you with your work and with everything that you do. I mean, it's as cliche as it is, you can't have a testimony without a test, right? I hate it, but it's really, really true, because it's like, don't show me, how can you tell me something that you've never been through?
Right.
So fast forward, when did you join the Navy? What age were you? Were you 18? Wow. So what prompted, because I'm hearing you're stubborn and you like to push the envelope, and then to be encouraged or influenced to go to the Navy after you, like, I'm going to run the Navy.
Right, right.
Like, how did you get to that?
Exactly. Right. So I was actually going to join seminary. I was going to be a minister.
Okay.
And my mom and dad are like, you've had an hour of Bible class since the fourth grade. You know more about the Bible than most of the adults in church. You don't know anything about life, kid. Like, you're counseling somebody about a boss. You've never had a boss.
Right.
I had a paper route as a kid. So I never had to work fast food. I never had to. I was always kind of my own boss. I was a serial entrepreneur from like the time I was 4.
It was birthing you. Huh?
Yeah. And so they're like, hey, you probably need some life experience. Why don't you join the Navy? So I took the test, and I was super smart. And so they're like, oh, you could be in the nuke program. And I wanted to be a pilot. And of course, they're like, well, 3 out of 4 pilots come from the Navy's nuclear power program. Oh, really? Wow. Tell me something else so I can believe that too.
Right?
You know? So anyway, I hopped in the nuke program, and I joined the military, and I went to sea, and I was in the First Persian Gulf War, and I was going to make it a career. And I spent 11 years in the military. But it was interesting because instead of going to seminary, I was with a bunch of guys that were all believers, and we actually had like a little church on an aircraft carrier.
And that's probably your support system. Yeah. Honestly, that's awesome. That's good. So you have a sister, you were saying, right?
3 sisters.
3. Are you the baby?
No, I'm the middle. I'm the second oldest.
Middle child syndrome is real. I'm middle too. I mean, it's real. People don't understand our struggle. But so you're the only boy? Only boy. What was that like growing up around all the, and I'm assuming that your sisters were strong-willed.
Well, so my one sister is a year and a half older than me.
Okay.
And then there's me, and then my mom had like 7 miscarriages. And so my second youngest sister, the one that you remind me of, Jennifer.
Shout out to Jennifer.
Yeah, she's like 13, 14 years younger than I am.
Okay.
And so by the time I was like leaving in the military, she was like 4, and my youngest sister was like 2.
Okay.
And so it was like 2 separate families.
There was a big age gap.
So I was out of the house before they were really in school. So it was really my older sister, and we fought like cats and dogs. And she'd get the upper hand occasionally, and every once in a while I'd get in a...
But us big sisters know when to leave the little brothers alone. Yep. We know that. We know when it's okay. I got to stop bullying him now.
Mom!
Right? And somehow you're always wrong no matter what.
Right.
So you go on, you're in the wars, and you have all this structure, and you're the military, I'm sure, transformed who you are. Then 9/11 hits, and you helped. What was your experience like helping with Ground Zero, and what prompted you?
My experience helping with Ground Zero was really interesting, because I just really cared about something I care about the country, and so when I see this is what's happening, this is what's going on in the nation, I'm like, my country needs me, so I'm going to go.
Right.
I was working at a nuclear power plant. 30.
Okay.
So I was out of the military.
You were done, yep. And you had you were starting to see that perspective. Because they say men really, truly never grow up until they're 35, right?
Right.
So
right.
you were already morphing into a different perspective already.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So you're seeing things differently. So you were working at a nuke plant.
Yeah. So I was working at a nuclear power plant, and I'm like, man, I really want to go because I feel like that my country needs me.
Right.
And so I went in and I went to my mom's house, and I announced, I'm thinking there's going to be like weeping and gnashing of teeth. I'm going to go to Ground Zero.
No.
And I'm thinking, don't. Why would you do that? And my mom looked up at me and she said, well, it's about time.
Right. You need me to drive you?
Like, we all knew you were going.
Right.
So I was there day 2. And I was there for 10 days.
Oh my goodness.
And so I inhaled a lot of stuff. Saw a lot of stuff. Had dreams about a lot of stuff.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, so had dreams of finding myself and my family in the rubble of Ground Zero, and all kinds of stuff.
And you know what? That's a lot to unpack, and I have so many questions. We're gonna take a quick break, and I'm very curious about that, because even when I'm thinking about the PTSD flashbacks that are gonna naturally come from that anyway, coupled with the 11 years that you just did in the military, being at that, even though 30 is old, it's still young when you're trying to navigate and figure out life as a man, and there's a lot that sounds like it was a crucial time in your life at that point. So I definitely have some questions about that, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, guys.
Join our network of podcasts and talk shows on TreasureCoastRadio.com. Go to www.treasurecoastradio.com for more information.
Welcome back to Mindset with Sherelle. I am so happy to have you guys here joining us with our lovely guest. You just have me in awe. Like, I know Joelle and I were talking on the side, and Joelle, you guys know, is behind the scenes and is the master behind this beautiful creation. But we're both sitting here just like at the ends of our seats because you're so interesting. You're just so your delivery, your experiences, and I mean, I swear I want to call you Dr. John. I'm gonna adopt. Like, I'm just gonna put Dr. John Michael. Like, it has a name. It has a ring to it. Like,
Maybe I should pursue that. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. You should. I think it really definitely has a ring to it, but. So where we left off, you were saying about how you spent how many days at Ground Zero?
About 10, 11 days.
10, 11 days?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you just feel the juncture, do you think the Holy Spirit just deposited that in your spirit? Like what? Because, I mean, we were all here. We all saw it. I remember, seeing it on the news, but there's no cap in my rap. Not one part of me made me feel like I'm going to jump on a plane and go there. So what, and I love our country, but where did that juncture come from, you think, and how did you know to act on that juncture?
It's interesting because there's a lot of stuff like hurricanes that have happened. And I know friends that, get in the car and drive down, and and I feel like certain ones of us are called for particular ones. And so Ground Zero was one for me. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. I love New York anyway. I'm not a New Yorker, but I've kind of been adopted as a New Yorker, and so I just... What's interesting is I had just gotten my best job outside of the Navy, working for a nuclear power plant. I was making great money. And so I had been there for maybe a month.
Oh, so you were new.
Yeah, I was brand new, and I didn't have vacation for a year. I had 2 weeks.
You're still on the probationary.
Right? Yeah. And so I was just like, man, I don't know I don't know what to do. You know, I was feeling, you know, a little disheveled. I work at a place where they have automatic weapons at the gates anyway, you know, so it was just kind of like, man, I don't know what, but everybody was kind of feeling weird about what was going on in the nation at that time. And so it was just like, man, I don't know. I want to do something, but I can't leave because I'm on you know, I don't have the vacation. And so finally I just decided that, you know what, this is it. I'm going. My country needs me. I'm going. And consequences be damned, frankly.
And how did it work? Because, you know, when God creates and tells us to do something, he's not going to leave us hanging or have to do anything. Was your job cool with it? Was everything, did it work out?
You know, I went to my boss and I said, listen, I need to go. I need to be there. I hope I have my job when I get back. And he's like, okay. Let us know how you're doing. Stay in touch. And so I did, and I actually ended up working overtime when I got back to make up the hours.
So you had that support.
I was
and
going.
See,
so yeah, they let me do it.
That's exactly.
But
So
I
God's
didn't know
not
if they
going
were
to
gonna,
set you up. But see,
right?
God's not going to bring you to something and leave you there and say, okay, figure it out by now. You know, it's gonna work out the way it's supposed to when you take heed and, you know, act the way that he's calling you to. So when you get there now, at that point, how did you get there? Because I remember flights weren't even a thing.
I drove.
Like,
I lived in Ohio.
Okay, I was going to say, did they get like a special?
Hopped in my car, drove. Okay. Thankfully, I had the presence of mind to bring a respirator, though I didn't use it.
I was going to ask. I was going to ask that.
Wish I would have. Brought leather gloves. Brought my hard hat from work, and I had a photo ID, which was great because when I get to New York and I get like there at like 2 a.m, and I'm driving down past Canal Street. There's National Guardsmen with M16s. Who are you and what do you want? And I said, I'm here from First Energy, which control the grid from the Indiana line to the Statue of Liberty. And so it was in New York. I said, I'm here from First Energy. I'm here to help. They're like, go. And so I immediately had access because I had a white hard. And what I found out later is all the FEMA guys had white hard hats.
Yes, they did.
And I had a white hard hat. So everybody just assumed I was one of the guys in charge.
And I mean, if you think about it, similar to firefighters, you know, firefighters run into burning buildings and we're running out. So who's really going to, in their right mind, say, here, let me, unless you really know that you're, you know, they're, you know. So that's, do you remember the anxiety you felt or the feeling? I always say, you know, scientifically and biblically, the feeling behind your belly button is your second brain. What did you feel when you take yourself back to that moment as you're driving past Canal Street? And Canal Street, for those who don't know, that's where, you know, we can get our Fendi purses and, you know, Coach purses and all that stuff, for those who don't know. But as you're driving through this busy, you know, well, I guess it wasn't busy at that point, but did you know New York prior to being there?
Yeah.
Okay, so to see the difference in that area before versus where you are now, I'm just trying to imagine what that did to you, and it's moving so fast. What do you remember feeling as you're driving up to that?
Overwhelmed. As you're driving, I'm just logistically, what streets are open? How can I get down there? No idea what to expect. Again, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning and it was raining, you know, and so it was just like, man, how do I get close enough to even do anything? I got about 5 blocks away and I parked on the street, and then I walked the rest of the way in, and there's 20,000 people standing in a 47-acre area, and there's smoke, there's fires, there's lights, there's hoses on everything. I mean, and it is absolute total chaos. And so I'm just kind of like, hey, what's going on? People are getting in lines and grabbing buckets and filling it with debris and handing it to the guy next to them. So it was pretty easy to see how you could get in and just be a part of just like the regular gaggle of people that were there to help. But as I stayed past day 1 and into day 2 and day 3 and day 4, at one point they said everybody that's not FBI, NYPD, or a firefighter or FDNY off the pile. And so they pulled everybody off the pile. I happened that day to be wearing a dark blue shirt. And so I looked like a cop or a firefighter. I was going to say, that's your uniform, I didn't drive 10 hours from Ohio to sit on the sidelines. Thank you very much. I'm staying there.
I know that's
Which was really a good decision. It sounds kind of arrogant, but it was really a good decision because I ended up getting a pass, which I still have, from the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management that I could be down there. And also, because I worked construction prior, I was one of the few guys that knew how to run an oxyacetylene torch. So we would go in and we would clean up as much of the rubble as we could, but then we had these huge pieces of steel that we had to cut so they could crane out, and they took all the guys off the pile that knew how to cut the steel. So everybody's like,
what do we do now?
You know, and so I spent a couple of days working oxyacetylene torches, cutting up pieces of the World Trade Center.
And do you see now how and I don't know if you saw this at the moment, just being young and again, navigating through life, but every situation that you went through up until that point got you in position for that. And it's like, people don't realize that a lot of times we're being equipped, we're being put in position for things that we don't see the big picture. And I'm sure if you would have looked back 15 years prior when you were 15, thinking that would even happen, and two, that you would even, have the faith and the, I don't want to say that, just the bravery to say, I'm doing this. I'm gonna look like an FDNY. I'm gonna look like I'm a cop, and I'm helping people. Like, to think back, did you even think you would even be in that position? Like, it's just, as you're looking at it, overwhelming. I don't even know how I would even feel in that moment. Like, it's got to be almost like an out of body, surreal thing. Like, how is this to visually see it, and then to feel everything, the sense, and to see I can only imagine what that did to you.
Yeah.
It's like you were literally in position. God equipped you with what you needed to do. And see why when we were talking earlier, how we try to run from our calling, never really can. Right. When it looks like chaos, it's God, because that's chaotic. I would have never have even thought that would even happen, you know? So fast forward, when you're done with that, you did you helped there. How did you know that you were essentially released to be done and come home? And like, how did you know it was your...
Day 10, they had pulled all the cops and the firefighters off. And the only people they allowed on the pile after that point were people that worked for a major construction company because of insurance purposes.
Liability. Mm-hmm.
And so what happened is they shifted the rescue efforts from rescue to recovery. Mm-hmm. I went out there in the hopes that I could save someone.
And rescue, yep.
And feel free to do the clinical psychology thing. I actually started a book. I wrote down notes as I was there in the quiet, when I'm sitting down resting or having a meal. Mm-hmm. And so I started a book. I'm about 7 chapters into writing a book. And the title of the book, before the TV series existed, was Rescue Me.
Really?
One Man's Search for Himself in the Rubble of Ground Zero.
Wow, that's
And I had just come out of a failed marriage a year before. And so the idea that I probably desperately needed to be involved in something that I felt could better the nation and possibly rescue someone to give meaning to my life at the time. And so I was there to find somebody alive in the rubble. They didn't find anybody alive after the first 27 hours. Yeah. And so after 10 days, we knew
there was,
that it's recovery.
Now
it's bag and tag. Yep. And I'm like, I'm not here for that.
And you knew what your purpose was. Do you think that you going out, because you mentioned the failed marriage piece, was that an overcompensation to not deal in a way too, added on to, because sometimes it's so much easier for us to, I'm going to help. Not to say that, you weren't supposed to do it, because you were, but do you think that adding on to it, that helped your mentality to be able to overcome that chapter or that season?
Are you saying I'm running from my problems? Is that your professional opinion?
It's a question. If the shoe fits, I got the size.
It was, it certainly felt noble for me to be down there. And I did feel a sense of purpose being there. And I love New York, and I love this country.
I knew you did when you mentioned the pizza. I'm like, yeah, he gets it. He gets it.
The pizza is the best.
Yep, for sure.
I don't do Chicago pizza.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about it. It's New York pizza, for sure. So did it help your getting over that chapter? Did it hurt it? Because the only reason why I'm asking that is because I'm going back to when you mentioned about Grandpa passing and not grieving. And I'm wondering if there's a pattern with not, and this is where
I see where you're at. I see where you got.
So,
you got me on a timeline on the chalkboard. We're
just
like
curiosity.
Kid issues right here.
Oh no, it
here
isn't
we go.
issues. But it's a lot easier to not have to confront or deal with stuff when I can, join the military or go and help people and do this and focus on others and not have to focus on me. But then, meanwhile, when that calms down, what did you get to heal? Did you get to grieve? Because essentially, just like you had to grieve Grandpa's passing, that's a pretty, you have to grieve the death of your marriage. People don't realize failed relationships, or you're grieving the death of something that's no longer. You're grieving the death of what you witnessed at ground zero. So, and these are all kind of, increments that are back to back in a short time frame if you really sit back and look at it. So how did you process, and did it do anything with dreams and flashbacks and the PTSD symptoms, or what came after that to be so young and still trying to navigate through a lens of, I'm trying to figure out this journey called life?
Yeah. Well, I think it helped me to feel like I was helping other people.
And be a part of.
And so, there's a lot of us probably that, are high-functioning wounded people. That we tell ourselves if it's about the greater mission, then
I don't
we
have to
feel
deal
like,
with me.
Yeah, I can sacrifice I'm good, I'm fine.
Right.
Let's focus on saving the people buried in the rubble. And there's like no more, I'm a little bit of an extremist. I have friends that tell me I'm kind of all or nothing. So there's
no gray area.
Yeah, there's like nothing more extreme than there's people trapped underground in a collapsed building. Come help now.
Especially when you have the expertise to be able to help.
Exactly. Yep. And you have favor on your life, so you know they're going to try to stop me. I'm going to get down. I guarantee you, if I go to New York, I'm getting down there.
Yep.
Nobody's turning me away at Canal Street.
Yep.
That's not going to happen.
And that's where that confidence and that stubbornness from when your teens came in, because you can't be an individual that takes no for an answer to be that. So that, again, that even though at the time when you were a teen, it didn't feel good, but it served you into that, to have that certainty to moving forward. So did you experience any dreams, and were you able to break them down, or was it?
I don't know that I experienced any dreams then. And now I didn't really start writing my dreams down in earnest until 2003. So this was 2 years after. I have one dream that I wrote down as a kid when I was like 13, and I don't think I have anything before that. But I do remember having dreams about people dying, about searching through rubble, about finding myself and my family buried in rubble at the bottom of a building, like just bizarre stuff.
Wow.
I think at this point I don't remember if it was a dream or a vision. I think it was probably a dream. This was one of the worst, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So I'm walking down a street in New York, and there's ground zero. There's all the rubble, and there's like this grate, like a sewer grate, but it's like you can see, how you can walk over and you can see down?
Right.
So there were all these people underneath, and they're sticking their fingers up through, and they're yelling, help, help, get us out of here. And their fingers, and there's all these business people just walking by like nothing's happening.
The picture I'm getting is that the New York Post one of everybody with their arms through the windows.
Yes.
That's what's coming to my head as you're explaining that one when before viral was a thing.
Right.
But I remember that picture. Wow. So that's what you're.
And so I'm like screaming, like I'm running out trying to, because I'm trying to lift the grate and I can't do it. But I feel the sense of urgency that these people need help. Yeah. And so I'm like grabbing business guys and saying, come and help me. And they're looking at me like, what's wrong with you? I'm going to work.
Like they can't see
I'm
what
like,
you see.
Dude, there's people dying. Like what the? And it was just so frustrating. It's like that moment in Pearl Harbor in the movie when they hear the guys knocking and they're trying to cut a hole in the ship before everybody drowns, and they're holding their hands and then they all drown.
And they all drown. Yeah.
It was that moment.
Oh my goodness!
So that was
and
probably
when you're
one of the more profound ground zero dreams.
And when you're waking up from it, because I can honestly. There's only been a few times in my life where I've woken up like, you know what I mean? Usually, but in those moments, is that a situation where, do you remember how you were when you woke up? Like after dreaming something so intense?
I don't, but there's this thing that would happen medically. So after being down there, like I went down there for New Year's Eve of 2001 because I wanted to go back. I promised myself I'm going to go back when the city's better. And I went down and did the whole New Year's Eve celebration. I made the decision 24 hours before the ball dropped. I'm going to New Year's Eve in New York by myself tomorrow. I don't care. I'm getting on a plane. A friend of mine bought me a ticket. I went down there.
No fear.
And so I did that. But then I spent like 90% of my time back at ground zero. And of course it was all walled off.
I was going to say at that point, I remember.
But it was just like my heart was down there. And
something was pulling you.
So I went to the Embassy Suites. That was the Embassy Suites right off of World Trade Center 1. And the whole and I had, when you're doing all this work, you were looking for a place, like you'd work for 20 hours and you'd be exhausted.
Right.
Like, dude, I need to go lay down somewhere.
Yep.
And so all of the buildings were abandoned, but all of the doors were kicked open. And so I stumble into this Embassy Suites, and they had busted in all of the doors. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to grab some random bed and sleep here for the night. And so that's what she did. I slept on a cot in a public school in the hallway one night, and so sleeping in an actual bed was like cool. And so I went back to this Embassy Suites. The whole entire building was hermetically sealed, and it said asbestos, danger asbestos. And I'm like, I spent like 4 nights in that whole thing.
Oh my gosh. It's interesting you say that because my dad died of bone marrow cancer, mastocytosis, and he lived in a building in Long Island that is now, in the school I went to, my elementary school, both buildings are knocked down for asbestos. And, it's got to get bad for them to knock it down because they don't, they'll just abandon it, whatever. And they're thinking there's a link between that bone marrow cancer and him ingesting that, living, in that building for so long. But, I'm going back to the Chinese drywall issue we used to have around here. And I remember people that I worked with would be getting random nosebleeds or random pulmonary issues. Their rent was like $500 a month, but that's why. So you're seeing all that. Like I spent and even when you go back and you do the research on, people that survived, a lot of people did not survive. Or if they did, they're having some type of medical something that's going on. And I mean, do you want to speak to what, I know you said you had a little cough, or like, what did you notice in yourself physically since then?
Well, so right afterwards, I noticed very much a diminished capacity to be able to do stairs. What felt like exercise-induced asthma. In fact, I'd go out and walk and I'd start wheezing, and it would feel like I had like the Pink Panther fiberglass insulation in my lungs.
Yep.
It would just hurt.
Yep.
But what would happen is, and this goes to your question, how did you wake up? I'm not sure if this happened the night that I dreamt this, but I feel like it might have. Because we had this stuff in our lungs that nobody knew what it was, we would cough it up, and then you immediately swallow it, and then your stomach goes into the hyperproduction of hydrochloric acid, which is severe acid reflux.
Yep. And it hurts coming back.
And it hurts. So what would happen is I would go to sleep at night, and a lot of times I would wake up throwing up in my mouth. And I would hear the sound of and then, and if you don't catch it immediately and you inhale, it either you're like, and then you feel like you literally just tried to snort bleach. Not that I've ever tried to snort bleach, but how I imagine.
Well, I mean, we did have a president that told us to at one point. So if you did, no judgment. But so that's scary. It was scary.
So you wake up like this, you can't breathe, and you're trying to rinse your mouth out, and you're eating bread and milk and all this stuff, and it doesn't go away.
No.
And it takes you a half an hour before it settles down enough that you can breathe normally. And so I wonder if that happened the night that I dreamt that, because it's such a poignant memory of one of the dreams that I had related to Ground Zero. That would happen 2 or 3 times a week.
Really?
And the nights that it didn't happen, I would wake up and I would take a shower. It's a little gross, but I would be throwing up stomach. I hadn't eaten anything at all.
Right.
And I'd be throwing up stomach acid in the shower in the morning because of all the crap that was in my lungs.
That was coming in. Wow.
Right.
That's and people don't even think, and that's just so selfless of you to put yourself in harm's way to help others. And you didn't even think, you just knew, I need to do this, and you acted on it. There was no fear. There was no I can't fly there. You drove there. I mean, that is so commendable. That's huge. But that's why when I told you at the beginning when we were off air, I'm like, you're your own little social worker, but you really are, because you see a need, you stepped in, and I mean, I know you do life coaching as well, but you really, that's what, and that's the difference between the people who have hearts of social work and then others who don't. You see the need. You don't need to be compensated, reimbursed. You're not looking for anything. You see the need and you act upon it. And that's just, either you have it or you don't. And you definitely do. So So
not a savior complex.
Well, that too. I mean, I like to say Captain Super Save-A-Ho. But you have to be careful too, because
I like the way you put it.
Right?
We'll go with that.
Right? You got to be careful too, because just as you make things work. You're the solution focused. People that need help will see that vulnerability, take advantage of that, and use it to their benefits. And we know, people suck sometimes. And that was gonna be my next question. How did you differentiate going through knowing when there's even a friendship, a romantic relationship, just anybody that, do you trust yourself with saying, wait, there's an ulterior motive here? Because that's a struggle that is lifelong, honestly. And life has a funny way of giving us the same type of test, and we wonder, why am I going through this constantly? Well, because you haven't mastered it quite yet. So I just wonder, have you learned throughout your experiences how to differentiate between the people that are taking advantage or the people that truly do need your saving?
Well, I'd like to believe that I have that all figured out.
Don't we all?
It's so much easier to see it in somebody
is.
else's life.
Absolutely.
Hey, this person's taking advantage of you. You should deal with that. And then, of course, when it's in our own life, it's like, wow.
We think the red flags are a carnival.
Right,
like it's fun. Yep, I understand. But is it because you're so humbled, you're so down to earth? Is it an instance where you seeing the benefit of the doubt helps or harms, or is it eye opening, or how do you balance for someone who's struggling with that?
I think somebody asked me a powerful question a long time ago, and it's one of my favorite questions. It's, what are you committed to cause? And it goes to the root and the heart of like, okay, so you're going to go to New York. What are you committed to cause? Like, how do you think this is going to work?
Right.
Like, is it a failure if you don't find anybody alive? And then we found that like the rescue dogs, they get so depressed if they don't find anybody alive that they would have to send a rescue worker to like lay in the rubble and pull a piece of like debris over the top of them so they could pretend that the dog found somebody alive, and then they'd give the dog attaboys. And I'm like, if this is what it does to dogs,
imagine us.
What the heck are we doing to people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're so right. People don't think dogs grieve. And when my dad passed, I woke up and saw my dog crying in between the laundry room and the garage where he would always come in at like 3 a.m, crying. And I'm like, I didn't realize. I mean, yes, they're a lot like us, but they're very in tune. Yeah. So for you to say that, I didn't even realize it went to that extent to get them to feel like you're a part of, to feel like I did good, you know what I mean? Like, but if you look at it, that's really all we want is, and that's where it turns into, as humans, feeling appreciated and feeling like our hard work and our endeavors are being noticed. And when they're not being noticed, that does a lot to someone internally and even, spiritually. It's like, well, God, why are you not paying attention to me? Why am I not getting recognized? And that's where a lot of people can start challenging, God and getting that bitterness. And you said yourself, at the beginning when God was telling you about the dreams before, you're like, I'm reading this wrong. What was the point of this? Like what, so how did you kind of navigate through realizing that sometimes life has to be a parable? I mean, everything, the Bible are parables, right. Every time somebody else reads it, it's a different, that's the art of being humans and different. Your comprehension is different than mine. You can help give me a different perspective, but how do you navigate through your line of practice to be so confident and to know in your work? Because think back when we first get into any field of anything and we're trying to figure it out and get our expertise in line, there's some struggle there with, do I know what I'm doing? And is somebody else going to know that I don't know what I'm doing? And you know what I mean? So how did you kind of perfect that wisdom and knowledge and confidence without being arrogant and, coming across, because that could be a defense mechanism too. So I was just wondering, how'd you navigate through that?
That's a really good question. For me, being raised with, such a faith background, if I'm going to study something, like when I was in finance, I dove deep into biblical economics, wrote 2 books about biblical economics. And so when I get on the dream thing, it's like, well, I want to study everything there is. And then, of course, I was challenged to go look up all the demonic dreams in Scripture, found none. But I started looking at everything deep level on Scripture. And I'm like, I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So how do you interpret dreams?
Right.
And I noticed Joseph in the Bible, who was Isaac's son, or I'm sorry, he was Jacob's son.
Jacob's, yeah.
Right? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Joseph. He comes from a lineage of people that have talked to God, had dreams, had visitations, whatever. And his most mature was when he interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh in Genesis 41. And it's not one dream, it's 2 dreams. We call 2 pieces, more than one piece of information in the intelligence world, a dossier. Because I'm not just looking at one, I'm looking at 2 and comparing and contrasting. And so it's the only biblical dossier that's done, and it's done verbally in person, which is a whole nother level of being able to, master the craft of analyzing or decoding, to be able to do 2 at the same time in person, not have the chance to go away, write it down, study, take a minute. No, right now I want the answer. And so the first thing out of the 5 things that Joseph did, and this is one of the things I teach, we call it the Joseph method. In a very original title. It's not mine. It's not the John method. It's the Joseph method.
Although the John method does have a ring to it.
We'll see. The first thing that he did is he started with humility. He just said, look, I don't know. I don't know the answer. Daniel did the same thing with Nebuchadnezzar. Look, I don't know the answer, but there is a God in heaven who wants you to know. And so when I got the breakthrough and realized that all dreams come from God, and what he told me, that dreams are the love language of God to his kids, you realize that the divine creator wants to communicate. So he wants you to have the answer. He didn't hide it so it stays hidden. He hid it for discovery. And so when you have a weird sex dream, or when you have a dream that people are dying, or you have this nightmare and you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're troubled, that's by design. Like, God doesn't have the MPAA. He's not like motion picture or something. Like, he loves shock value. That's why people have these weird dreams and then they're troubled.
And then oh my
they're
gosh,
I had a dream that I was thinking this way about the pastor's wife, and I don't know, and blah, blah, blah. I don't feel that way about her, dude, I swear. And, you know, and so we get this all the time. And it's like, but now you're talking about it, aren't you?
Right.
And so now you can meet somebody who can give you an interpretation and you can get the answer. So the circle of communication is completed. Otherwise, if you have a dream that you don't remember, is not really vivid, isn't a nightmare, isn't in color, whatever, then guess what? Or it isn't reoccurring, then a lot of times we tend to just blow them off.
Right.
You know,
and you forget about it. And
yeah, so if you know these things as a core value, God is communicating and all dreams come from God. God wants to be understood. Then you can say, okay, my job is to just not make it about me. And so one of the things we do is we practice tactical listening. Where we have good eye contact, we listen, we empathize, and it's just good communication skills.
And
it's
active
not
listening skills, You're just being present with the person,
And then understanding what were the main symbols in the dream. And as somebody is sharing a dream, there's actually multiple conversations going on. So they're telling me what their dream is, and God is saying, that cat means this. They had a cat when they were 7 years old that died, and this is what that is. And I'll say, did you happen to have a cat when you were, say, 7 years old? And they're like, how did you know that? You know?
So you're getting that. And are there instances where you maybe, because I mean, sometimes for me, the Holy Spirit will deposit things after the fact, and it may not be, and it's like this came after. Why didn't you tell me that? Or maybe I'm hearing, but I'm not hearing, and where there's a million things going. It's like you really have to. It's an art to be able to sit there and focus on that. So I write stuff down. And have you ever had an instance where someone has come to you to decode a dream and you didn't have the answers then, but that did later? And and how are people, because a lot of times people want everything now. So do they understand that, hold on, there might be a 3-day turnaround? Like, how do people react with that in such a demanding, I want everything right now world that we live in?
A lot of times people are patient if they really want an answer. But again, a lot of times people don't want an answer.
That's right. Or they're looking for the answer. They're looking for advice for the answer they already know, they already have.
Right. One of the things that really set me free is when I realized that I don't have to interpret everybody's dream. Because I'm the dream guy, people want to say, can I tell you a dream? Great. And then I'd be like, okay, I got to get in tactical listening mode. I got to forget these side conversations I was having, focus on the person. What are the key symbols? What am I hearing? And then I realized that they'd get done and they'd be like, oh, hey, you want to go get a bite at the buffet table? And I'm like, they didn't want an answer.
Yeah,
they just wanted to share it. And so then I can affirm them and say, wow, that's a really important dream. You should look into that. Or God is really talking to you. And then they're like, oh,
you're right.
Okay. Wow,
so you realize that not everybody's your assignment, because that can get exhausting.
Oh my
gosh. When we walk around trying to
social workers, right?
exactly. And it's like you said earlier. You could be in the at Publix somewhere, grocery shopping, and somebody sees a sign on your head, and then they're downloading everything. And how do you navigate through that with? Because energy, is not destroyed, it's transferable. So a lot of times we can be walking along our way, be great, and then come into encounter with someone who has the worst energy, and it's transferred, and now it's deposited into you, and you're trying to figure out, where did this come from? How do I get rid of this? How do you, because I'm sure that's an ongoing thing, to not carry everyone's energy with you. And so does the self-care work for you, or how do you release, because you make people feel better, and they come to you feeling terrible, I'm sure, and then you get them all ready and make them feel good. They go away happy, and now you're stuck with their energy. How do you kind of balance that?
That's a really good question. I have an innate ability to remember at a deep level, but in the dream world, I have this incredible ability to immediately, like, people will be like, hey, that dream I told you about yesterday, and I'm like, dude, I've had 20 dream conversations. Like, I couldn't even tell you anything about your dream yesterday. But people will send me, hey, remember that dream I sent you 5 months ago? No, I don't. Send a copy and we can talk.
Let me see if it triggers something.
Right. So a lot of that is just the process of like, letting it go and realizing you don't have to give everybody an answer and you don't have to fix everybody. Like you said, not everybody's your assignment.
That's right.
But there's ones that like punch you upside the head.
Yeah. And
I'll give you an example. As I was with a friend that was teaching a prophetic thing in Redding, California. There's a big church out there, and so they have a big prophetic community. He was teaching what he calls the Advanced Prophetic Institute. This particular night, now he's a friend of mine, so I was in town, called him up, hey, let's do lunch. He goes, hey, we're talking about dreams tonight at my Advanced Prophetic Institute. You should come. I'm like, okay, so I'm like, I want to hear what my friend has to say about dreams. So I show up and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, John Redenbow. And he hands me the mic and I'm like, bro,
talk about
you didn't give me any, like, come on. And so what I share, one of my go-to revelations to share was the idea that I believe all dreams come from God. And I was about to tell the Facebook story that I told you, and I just say, one of the deepest revelations I've received is all dreams come from God. Hand up in the front row, an attractive looking, probably 45-year-old lady. Says, I had a dream I was raped by my father. You're telling me God gave me that dream. There's no way around this question.
What is your even... See, I wear my feelings on my face. Even as a therapist, I have to tell myself as a clinician, like, control that. So what do you do in that moment? How do you react?
At the moment, I was probably, if I'm honest, a little terrified.
Right, I bet. Like, how was it taken back?
50, 75 people in the room.
Waiting for your
90% of them are women.
Yes.
And this is a church that is very kind of grace-filled. Like, there isn't probably a person in this church that believes that God would give someone a dream, that a loving God would never give someone a dream that their father raped. And so I'm just like, God,
how do I even respond?
I don't have any answer at all. And so I'm immediately like, help, like, throw your boy a bone here.
Yeah.
And so I just feel this, again, something comes to mind that I know at this point is no longer my own thoughts. I just feel a question or a statement, and I feel, ask her how she felt. And so I'm about to say it, and then I stop for a minute, and I'm like, oh, good Lord.
That might trigger someone right there.
I'm going to look like the biggest idiot on the planet. Like, are you kidding me?
Tell me how that makes you feel.
How did you feel when your father was raping you? How stupid are you, dude? Like, what a guy thing to say. Like, I'm just like, oh, my gosh. I'm going to get stoned by the time I walk out of this building.
Where's the side door?
And he's like, just ask her. So I go into this, you know what? I'm still learning. We're all learning how to hear God and this and that. I don't always hear right, but I feel something come to my mind, and I just have to ask you a question. Are you okay with that? Yeah. How did you feel? She goes, I was really annoyed. You were annoyed. Your father was like, that's not the word out of any 500 words we could choose to describe that incident. Annoyed would not be on there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean you were annoyed? And she said, well, I just wish he'd finish. I had stuff to do. I'm like, you're looking at your watch like, hurry up, I have laundry? And I said it just like that. Hurry up, I have laundry. And she's like, yeah, pretty much. So there's no trauma associated with this experience where we always think, well, it could be traumatic because it feels so real and it's such a vivid. She's got no trauma. And then I see a picture in my mind's eye of a heart. And there's a black spot on it. And I feel that I see this hand, which I just assume is the hand of God, because it's like the picture, right? It's the hand of God reaching towards it to touch it. And every time it touches this area, she goes, and she shrinks back. And I heard this. I want to heal her, but every time I touch this area, it feels like a violation or forced intimacy from the Father.
And God's a gentleman, and he would,
And so I say this, so she bursts out sobbing instantly.
You struck that nerve.
And she's like, oh my gosh, you're so right. I know the area he wants to heal me. Thank you so much. You changed my life.
Wow, look at that.
And I'm sitting there like, that worked? Are you kidding me?
Wow, look at that.
And everybody in the room, including myself, like, because I take no credit for that. Like, I'm not that smart. Like, everybody was speechless. Like, did he just prove that God gave her a dream that her father raped her and it was actually
healing
from God, helping her in her healing journey? Like, there's no way you would ever think that those two would correlate. And that's when I realized, oh, God's all about shock value.
Yes.
Like, he'll get your attention, so you have to talk about it.
And a lot of times, if it's not shock value, how are you going to God knows that certain people have to be captivated in a certain way.
Right.
So that's, he knows his people. That's so profound. That is, and I know we're nearing the end, and you've been wonderful. I want to
hear one of your dreams.
That's what I was just about to say, because I know what the scripture says about, people that have passed are not, we won't speak and all that stuff. I dreamt when a little bit after my dad first passed. Now, my dad passed was very traumatic. It was, he was holding my 6-month-old baby, had a heart attack, and I'm in a situation where I have to get my baby from rolling off the bed, get my 6'3" dad on the floor flat. Mom couldn't find stuff. It was just a mess. Dogs, it was just calling brother, who's an EMT paramedic. It was a lot going on. So, getting the baby protected, doing the compressions and all that. I know that with the brain without oxygen, 4 minutes, that's, so we knew that. We kind of knew it was coming. I'm sure my dad knew it was coming too, because unfortunately, it was normal for his heart to hurt. And he had supraventricular tachycardia from the cancer, from the asbestos and all that stuff that followed. And he was just tired. He was 58. He was tired. So he didn't want to go to the hospital. His body told him a week and a half beforehand. He was tired. So a little bit after that, of course, the middle child. I'm the go-to one. The funeral and all that stuff. Everybody's calling me. How we're the ones that have to do it. We're the solution. We fix it. A little bit after that, everything calms down. I contact New York for my mom, get her all of her stuff. Because he was he played for the Packers, and he also was a officer at Rikers. So getting all his pension and stuff together for my mom, doing all that. Everything calms down, and I don't usually dream. I usually have issues with insomnia, go figure. But when I do dream, I usually don't remember. But this particular one, I dreamt of him, and he was just sitting by water, and it looked like what Adam and Eve would be sitting by. It was a peaceful, I'm just I've never seen the greenery, and he was just sitting there, but he looked so sad. And I'm like, so me and my little history and research with dreaming, I'm like, maybe he's attuning for his mistakes, and he's getting a flashback of what he,
Purgatory.
I wondered that. And I asked my mom, because he was a great dad, but, he was a football player. He's the reason why I don't date athletes, so great dad to me, but he wasn't a good husband. Yes, he saw the error of his ways toward the end of their marriage, and they were married since 1981, I think. So I'm wondering if that, and then, you start to see little, the cardinals, the butter, little stuff like that. And it's like, But I remember the look I saw on his face sitting there. It was like a look of remorse. I'm like, is he unhappy? Is he sad? But I wondered if it was purgatory. But it wasn't what you think of purgatory. It wasn't, he's getting ready to go with the gnashing of the teeth and all, and going to hell. I know he didn't go to hell, but I know he had to. I don't know if he was getting a recap of his life and seeing all that, but I don't know. That dream always stood out, because I never had a dream of him since. I did dream again. He came to me, and he would just touch my face, and I woke up, and that was it.
Wow.
Other than that, never spoke. Never any of that. So I was curious. That dream stood out with me, because I wondered. I'm like, is he at peace? And I've gone to his gravesite twice. I just can't go. And I'm very sensitive, and I pick up. And so I'll leave there, and I'm like, I don't even want to even. So for me, I can't go there. Some people find the cemetery peaceful. I don't. I carry a lot when I go there. So I choose not to. But I don't know. That was one dream. Then that one, the touching my face, was just two that always stood out to me. I didn't know why.
Wow,
what do you
that's
think?
Really interesting.
Yeah.
How was your relationship with your dad?
It was good. I went through my stage at first where I was mad at him for being my mom's husband, and I had to realize, wait, you're not my man, you're my dad, and that's not my place. So, you go through that teenage phase of, hearing and knowing more than you should as a kid, but kids are smart, they know everything. And then we became best friends. I always was a daddy's girl, though, so I think I put him on a pedestal, and then seeing how he fell off as a husband, that's what hurt me. But I'm like, but you're not my husband. So once I saw that shift, I was good. And then towards the end, I had my son is the first grandson of the family, because I'm the oldest. So, I know he died happy. He loved that baby. That was, oh my gosh, my son even has mannerisms like him. It's crazy. So, we were great, but it's almost like towards that end there, and even that day it happened, I knew I had to go to him. It was my mom's birthday, and it was 7 a.m. And dressed and ready with the baby, like, okay, let's go take mom to breakfast, and everyone's kind of just lounging around. But it was very strange that I felt like I had to be there in that moment. Nobody else was there but me, my mom, and him. My brother was at, just everyone, they were at work. So, but I felt the tug so strong to be there that morning at that time, that's so early in the day. So, but yeah, it was good. Other than that, we went through stages, but we were good. We were, like, I would call him probably before my mom. Like, we were that tight, yeah.
So in the dream, it was like the Garden of Eden.
That's what it resembled to me, yep.
But there was like a river or a body of water?
Yep. It was just a peaceful, calm body of water. It wasn't waves.
River,
it wasn't flowing.
lake?
It was like a lake. It was a lake.
Like a lake.
Yep.
Okay.
A lake. And like I said, the greenery, I just remember, and it was like a waterfall behind him. Just greenery.
Very serene.
Very, very serene.
And then you saw animals. You saw
Nope. I just saw the green and just him sitting there. He was just sitting there and
you
just
mention
looked
cardinals?
sad. After I would
Okay.
see, and I know cardinals don't stay around for long, but this one it flew and it was just walking in the parking lot. And I'm like, cardinals don't stick around like that. So, and then the day that we had to decide to take him off life support, we were sitting at the hospital and a butterfly was just there. And I knew at that moment, like, well, I knew he was gone at the house, but, you just, I knew there was no brain activity. But those are the two, and I know what those symbolize typically. So, but yeah, other than that, I hadn't, and then just him touching my face after. And it's been 2 years now. We just hit 2 years, July. So I hadn't had any.
How long
nothing since
after
then.
did you have the dream of him touching your face?
This was recent, probably about 4 months ago.
So I feel like there's a dichotomy that exists that you see in Genesis 41 where he says the dreams are one and the same. But then there's also continuation dreams, which again, when you really get into it, like God will have a conversation with you and pick it up 2 years later, like you're still in the same conversation.
Yep.
And so I feel, and I'm just going to tell you what I feel, what
Of course,
I sense.
yes.
The idea that he's in the Garden of Eden is the idea that he's back to paradise. So like you said, he's in heaven. It's the idea that he's at the place where the world was born. Eden is
No more
created out of a
suffering.
place like heaven. No more suffering. But he's sad. And I believe that he's sad because by a body of water, now the Garden of Eden has 4 rivers flowing from it. It doesn't have a lake.
Right.
So the idea that you see a lake, what I hear, and you said, but by the fact that you said it was still, I hear reflecting pool. So I feel like he's reflecting on his life
And choices
and he's
and-
sad because of missed opportunity. And I feel like because of your second dream, one of those missed opportunities was the opportunity to let you know how much he dearly loved you and he wanted to be in relationship with you and he wanted to see you raise your son and he wanted to be a part of that. But at that point, yes, he's in paradise, but he's missing out on his kids and his grandkids and all of these things. Yeah, he made it to the other side. By the way, a historical piece that I think you'll find really interesting is April 14th of 1865, 3 days after the Civil War ends. Abraham Lincoln is in a cabinet meeting with his whole cabinet, and he looks over at General Grant, and he says, did Sherman call last night? Did we get a message from Sherman? He goes, no, like the
Where's
Civil
that
War
coming
was
from?
over
Yeah.
2 or 3 days ago. Why would we get a message from Sherman? And Lincoln looks at the Secretary of the Navy and he's like, well, Henry or whatever the guy's name was, it's kind of in your department. He goes, I had a dream last night, which I have. It's a recurring dream, that I was standing on a cement platform and I saw a ship passing going to a distant shore.
My goodness, wow.
And he said, every time I have that dream, it portends an event of national importance. He said, I had it before Fredericksburg, Vicksburg, Bull Run, Antietam.
Wow.
And Grant turns a little ashen and he looks up and he said, sir, we didn't win all those battles. And he said, I didn't say it was a victory. I said it was an event of national importance.
Wow.
That is in the historic record. I believe it's in the minutes of the cabinet meeting that morning.
Wow.
Later
April
that
14th.
evening,
Okay.
he went to Ford's Theater.
And that's when he got assassinated.
That's when he got assassinated.
Wow.
The event of national importance that happened. And the idea that he sees a ship passing going to a distant shore, you can see the symbology
symbolism.
there.
Yeah, for sure.
So he's on now the other side of the shore. He's the opposite of Abraham Lincoln's dream from his perspective. And you're seeing he's at a distant shore. The
Yep.
Garden of Eden.
Yep.
It's calm and reflective.
Yep.
And he's sad.
Yep.
And also, there's a verse in Scripture that says at some point, Doesn't say as soon as we get there. It says there's a moment we talked about in Revelation where it says he will wipe away every tear. So just because we get on the other side doesn't mean we stop grieving. So I believe the combination of all of those things. And then the good news is the desire that God allows to be represented to you in the dream where he's touching the side of your face, which is just saying without saying.
I'm okay.
You know, the message without words. I'm okay. I love you. You're going to be okay. I'm proud of you. You know, all of these things that can be said just in the right touch between a father and a daughter.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, because it's like I said earlier, you can feel and sense and have discernment and have the God-given gifts when it's other people in other situations. You can always, but when you're in it, you second guess. And I journal just like you. I had books and boxes of stuff in my mom's garage, and when I moved, because I didn't have space, I'm looking at it and I'm reflecting, and I'm like, oh my, and I date everything, because I really feel like that dating in times, that's patterns. And so for you to say that, you definitely confirmed what I thought and what I felt. I just wasn't sure. I'm like, what else could it mean? But that's exactly what I felt in my discernment too. So I thank you for that.
So, and there's actionable intelligence in it too. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Brace yourself.
Okay.
So the actionable intelligence is to live out loud, live your life fully expressed, and have zero regrets when you get to the distant shore, and value family and your children.
It's so interesting you say that, because one of my fears has always been to be, like, look at Samson. He's so powerful. He could have just done so much more, but let the hoes get in his way. And it's like I never want to be in that place where God's like, you did great, but I had so much more for you. So you saying that again is confirmation. And, knowing my dad, he furthering education and doing all that. And that's he's good. You're good. You're good, doctor. That's why I'm telling you. I'm going to speak that into existence. So when I see that, I'm like, I told him. I told him. But thank you so much for joining us here on Mindset.
Such a pleasure.
You've been wonderful. And I know you said you've written some books. Is there anywhere where people can go and look for them, or anything to be coming out in the pipeline? Or
yeah, I'm actually looking at putting some books together related to dreams.
Okay.
And so that's in the works. We're in discussion about some things.
Okay.
The best place to get a hold of me or to find out anything about what I'm doing is dreamlifedecoded.com. I do a lot on YouTube every Tuesday night between 6 and 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a live dream interpretation show. It's not scripted. Anybody can call in and say, hey, I got a short. We ask for short dreams because it takes a little while.
Right,
your dreams were short, and we took a minute on them. So we want to be able to get to as many people as possible. But what I want to do is be able to do what we did here is for people to have the hope and to understand that God is speaking to them in dreams. It's his love language, and that they too can learn how to decipher and hear the voice of God.
And they can take heed from it. I love it. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us here on Mindset. You have just been amazing. And I know that you're gonna plant some seeds in some of our viewers, and I know that they're gonna be reaching out. And how are you on social media? Any Facebook or any we got
like 4 Facebook channels. We actually have a closed Facebook group that you can join. It's called the Dream Lab.
Dream
Lab.
We
have like 1,800 dreamers and dream interpreters. So if you don't want to wait till Tuesday to see if I'll have the opportunity to interpret your dream, you can get on there and post a dream, and you can get a barrage of other people that are trained that can help you decipher your dream.
I love it.
We have a free ebook with everything Scripture says, all the dreams in the Bible, there's 22 of them, all the verses on dreams. Did you know every dream in the New Testament is directly or indirectly about Jesus?
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, there's like 6 of them.
Wow,
including Pontius Pilate's wife.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at that. I love the historical piece, because even when you're talking about the Lincoln stuff, I love this. I love you have a way with teaching. If you don't become a doctor, you should become a teacher, professor of some kind, because you have a way of connecting and articulating, and your delivery is phenomenal. You've definitely blessed me by being here, and I just thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your authenticity. So thank you.
My privilege. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being your guest.
Thank you. And to everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. You can check me out Mindset every Tuesday. We will see you guys next week. And just remember, take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you later.
From the Treasure Coast to everywhere around the world, worldwide, treasurecoastradio.com. Join our network of podcasts and talk shows on treasurecoastradio.com. Go to www.treasurecoastradio.com for more information.